Hey team, and welcome to the video version of the Funnily Enough podcast. This is where you get the raw, unedited version of the interviews that we do on the show. If you're more of an audio person, then head over to Apple Podcasts or any of the platforms that you like that supports podcasting, and you can listen to the fully edited thing there with intros, outros, and all the fun little jingles. However, if you're more of a video person, then that is coming right up. Chris Marr, welcome to the Funnily Enough show. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I've channeled my sense of humor. I assume that I need to have a sense of humor for this podcast. Would have been called Funnily Enough, but I don't really know what I'm getting myself in for, Gav. So you've got me on the edge of my seat here.
That's what I like to hear. We're going to get straight to the serious stuff, actually, which is, would you rather begin every sentence in your life with, hey, idiot, or end every sentence with, haha, that's just kidding?
Probably the latter, but I don't really know what that means.
So you'd be like, you'd be on stage delivering a keynote on marketing, and then at the end you'd have to go, that's just kidding, guys.
I'd go with that one. That would be me. Yeah.
Or go on stage and be like, hey, idiots.
Yeah.
I think either would work.
No, I would probably be more likely to go for the latter one. Yeah.
That's funny. I thought it was quite.
That'd be brilliant to do that, though, is to do something and then just say, I'm just kidding. That'd be awesome.
That'd be good. Funny. Amazing. Well, there's so much stuff that we could speak about today. I mean, we've known each other for years now, and we've had many a deep conversation, many random conversation. Yeah. But often, I guess, and more latterly, we've spoken a lot about the importance of good communication. Mm-hmm. And it's been really cool to watch your journey of learning to be a better communicator, improving communication, and more recently into your study of philosophy. So I want to know, like, where did this journey begin? And when I ask that, was there like a specific conversation, a specific moment in your life where you went, I need to get better at this communication stuff, or I need to study this philosophy stuff?
Yeah, I'll keep it relatively short because I know this is a really quick podcast. But so there's two major parts of this story. There's a bigger story here, but there's two major parts. Part one is I was with a bunch of friends, people that you know, Dr. Gray, Colin Gray, people like that. And we were saying to ourselves, there's nowhere in the UK really to get the kind of speaking and presenting skills that we really need, right? That we really want to practice. We need someone that can coach us and train us, and someone that's like just at a completely different level than everybody else. So Marcus Sheridan was that person that we were kind of talking about. We're like, well, how do we get Marcus to teach us? We could do a small group or something like that, do it over Zoom or Skype or something like that. But naturally what happened was that we got a group of about 30 people together and we did this event in the UK. We got Marcus, we basically got enough money to bring him over. And that was the start of something pretty epic called World Class Communication. And it was at that event, this was in 2016. This was in 2016. It wasn't even that long ago that we did this. It's been such an amazing 3 or 4 years since then. And I've been working with Marcus for about 5 years. But this is at this point. Now, the part of the story that's really important is that we had a day off, and I took Marcus and his videographer, Patrick, around Scotland for the day. And we got in the car and I said, Marcus, I've been on communication skills training for most of my life, right? So when I was 19, I started at the University of St Andrews. They had a massive professional development. I could have went on any course. I was on courses all the time. I was like, I've never seen anything quite like this. It's clear to me that what you're teaching us is something that you never learned in a classroom, right? So in that moment, I was like, well, I'm not going to learn it probably in a classroom either. What is it? How do I develop this set of skills? I don't want to be Marcus Sheridan. I want to be the best communicator that I can be. So we got talking, he shared the story, and it's essentially decades of him being in situations where he's had to communicate at a higher level, right? It's a learned skill, not a taught skill, if that makes sense. It's different. He's had to learn it. And there's a lot more to it than that. That was the first part. So I was like, right, okay, this is something I'm going to have to go. It's not So the natural inclination is when you want to learn a new skill, you go outward. You're like, right, course, books, you bring it in. However, in this one, it was clear to me that whatever I needed was inside of me and it had to come out, if that makes sense. So it was inward. So almost at that point forward, I stopped like reading business books. I stopped doing all the stuff I was doing. And I started to go in the way instead. This has been huge. This is the trigger. Still didn't figure it out though until I was sitting in the room as Marcus's understudy at the same event in over a year later. So it was about 18 months later. I still hadn't figured it out yet. And I was sitting there and I was like, how can Marcus coach these people? You were at this event. You were on the stage as a VIP at this event. And I'm sitting there as his understudy. And long story short, it hit me. I was like, why can Marcus see things that I can't see in people? How is he able to coach at this higher level and I can't see what he sees? And it was because he's got a really strong sense of himself, right? A really strong self-image. In other words, he doesn't have to protect himself when he's coaching or speaking or is in front of a group of people or when he's just talking to people, generally speaking. He's not interested in protecting himself. Like his ego is not part of this. He's 100% invested in what he sees in front of him. He doesn't have to protect himself. So to me, that was like a strong sense of character, a really highly dialed in self-awareness. And I was like, that's what I'm missing. That's what I have to develop. And it's been since 2016, that 3.5 years or so now, where I've been trying to figure that out.
So with that in mind, then, when you're taking your learning inwards rather than looking outwards, what does that look like practically when you're coaching or in a business sense? Does it mean, for example, when you're coaching someone on stage to become a better speaker, communicator, because you've got a strong sense of self, you're not worried about what they're going to think because you know what you're saying is going to help them? Is that, like, from a practical point of view, is that what that looks like?
It means that you're not trying to be right. You're not worried about being right or wrong. You're not worried about whatever happens in front of you making you look bad. You're not worried about whatever happens in front of you or what anyone says that it becomes a personal attack on you, even if it's about you. It means that you're removing yourself from the teaching. You're just the guide. So it's not about you. And oftentimes you'll see this yourself, and anyone that's listening or watching this will see this all the time, is that people need to be right. They need to prove that you are wrong. And they are afraid to do and ask the questions and go as far as they need to go with the people that they're coaching and teaching, because they're afraid that they lose control and they're afraid that whatever happens makes them look bad. But as soon as you can let go of all of that, you can go much further. There's no fear there, and you can ask questions and you can coach people into places that it's where they need to go, whether they know it or not. But you have to be able to do that without it being about you. Does that make sense? It's not hugely practical, but that's where it allows you to go. The practical thing, though, Gav, comes from, it's almost like you have to do the opposite of what everybody tells you to do, which is all the motivational and inspirational stuff, watching the videos, blah, 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 listen to the podcast and things like that. And you need to go and you need to say, how do I feel about this? Mm-hmm. Like, it's one thing that we're not taught now is this critical thinking. And we aren't exploring our own feelings. In fact, a lot of the stuff that we do is numbing our feelings. We go to places like social media and videos and podcasts, even books and training courses, almost as a way to ignore how we feel about things. So the one thing that's helped me, and I know this without a shadow of a doubt, is my daily, on a good day, to be able to write every day about how I feel about something, an observation, something I did wrong, anger, fear, resentment, jealousy, envy, any of those feelings. I need to go, how do I feel about these things? Why am I behaving this way? That's self-awareness. And it's a practice. It's not something you might read in a book that you have to do, or you might be triggered by an event that says, I have to go there, but you have to go there. Like, it's like, you have to go on the journey. Nobody's going to do that for you. So that's the practical side as well, is to almost allow yourself to feel, and then and help you, be able to say, how do I feel about these things? And then be confident about how you feel about those things, so you can talk about them with other people as well.
Yeah, I love that, because something that you triggered in me, which is starting the Daily Stoic, which is every single day, taking time out to think about something and that's something being yourself. But I couldn't fast forward the 6 months, or what month are we in? August, the 8 months that I couldn't read that in a book. I've had to put in some work every single day for 8 months to get to where I am now. And I'm nowhere near where I want to be. And it's a constant journey.
Exactly.
I would quite like to dive back into the coaching thing, actually, which is, as a coach, or I think probably a lot of people here are a coach, even if they don't class themselves as a coach. You teach
We're
people.
all coaches and consultants.
Yeah, whether that's kids or
not. Yeah, exactly.
So taking what you just described with having that strong sense of self, one of the things that just sprung to my mind was when I see people coach, and when I coach, oftentimes you get pushback on ideas. And sometimes I wonder, actually, now it's kind of light bulb moment in my head. I wonder if that pushback I take is a negative thing, whereas it's actually not a negative thing. It's just that something that I've just triggered something in the person I'm coaching's mind. Whereas when I've seen Marcus coach, I've never ever seen pushback. But I don't know if it's because I've never seen pushback, or it's just because the way he does it, or the way he takes any pushback, he takes it and then pushes it back to them almost in a positive way. Yeah. So from a coaching perspective, and having this strong sense of self, does that allow you to work with people when they do push back, or does it stop people from pushing back so much? And as you, who's practiced this for much longer than me, when you get pushback from people on your ideas, let's say we're coaching someone on speaking on stage. They deliver a talk, you question them and you say, I think you could do it better by doing this, or how do you think you could do it better? And they come back and they go, actually, I think that was really good, or no, this was right because. When somebody gives that sort of pushback, how do you respond to that?
Right, so there's a couple of things here. One is, we've already mentioned it, is the need to not be right or wrong, right? So it's only pushback. When we say pushback, and I'm just picking up on the words, pushback is like you're being threatened, right? Yeah. It's like they're saying that, no, you're wrong. And it's not about being right or wrong. Part of the philosophy behind world-class communication is the yes and principle, that we're always moving the conversation forward, that we always agree as a group or in a coaching relationship that we're willing to try, that we're willing to move, right? So it's never about right and wrong. It's about, is this possible, right? So there's a philosophy in there that isn't about anybody being right or wrong. It's just a willingness to try, a willingness to move, a willingness to say, hey, what's next? Like, how do we move this conversation forward all the time? So there's that. So I think you can eliminate, like, it only feels like pushback when you deem the world to be binary, right and wrong. And I think in a lot of coaching situations, you see, anybody listening to this has seen this happen in their every single day. YouTube comments, social media comments, this need for me to be right and you to be wrong. However, there's a fundamental other principle, or part of the philosophy of communication as well, that eliminates this entirely, which is then when you are able to make someone move on their own. So you're able to, instead of you trying to say, you should do this, you in your head know where you want to take them, but you make it that they own the idea, right? So is it possible to shift it so that you're not, see, we're wired to give advice. Yeah. And also in order to give advice, as part of giving advice, we have to make assumptions. It's like the complete wrong formula for coaching, right? So as soon as we say, here's what you should do, we've just wrapped up a bunch of assumptions and said, answer, solution. I'm trying to save you. I want to rescue you, right? But as much as we want to do that, it's actually can be really destructive and sometimes the wrong thing, and oftentimes the wrong thing to do. So I'm just sort of taking your thread here about the pushback. That is completely eliminated when you don't see it happening to Marcus, because it isn't actually happening at all. It's not happening because he's using a different technique where pushback just does not exist, because he's not giving advice for them to say no or yes to. He's making it their journey, their idea. It comes back to that sort of metaphor or analogy. I can never figure out which one's which, but to be a guide, you're the guide. You're like Yoda in Star Wars, right? You're just helping them to move, find the right path. So it's like, advice almost is like, you should take this path. And then they take the path, but they never feel confident about it. Whereas if you can get them to take the same path, but they own it, then they feel confident. Then it's a completely different journey for them. So it's, you can see where they need to go, but how do you make it their choice?
That's so powerful, because it totally makes sense in that if you're telling somebody to do something, of course you're going to get pushback, because nobody, and pushback is just the term I'm going to use here, whether it's right or wrong, because people don't like being told what to do. Whereas,
true,
let them own the idea and simply just maybe ask a question like, is it possible for you to try this? Then they're going to go, well, yeah, of course it's possible. Then they start to own the idea. Amazing stuff.
The questions are the key. Like, that is the key to it. So I spend almost all of my time developing new questions or new lines of questioning that help with all of this, right? So someone says, I don't know, so a basic one might be something like, I've recorded this video, but it's way too long. And I would say something like, well, do you think that someone that's trying to educate themselves about this product or service is willing to watch a video that's longer than 90 seconds? And they're like, oh yeah, of course they would be able to. Well, there we go. So it's like, there's always a question. Instead of giving advice, it's like, how can we wrap up the advice? It's almost a filter. I want to give this advice. How do I make it a question? And it's like, it's a tough shift for a lot of people, especially leaders, consultants, freelancers. They're like, you should do this. Everybody's full of ideas as well, Gav, right? I've got great ideas. Ideas are dime a dozen. They're cheap, right? So how do we strip away all of that and stop trying to look smart, stop trying to look clever, stop trying to get the attention, and instead try and guide people instead? And yeah, you don't get as much recognition and attention for that, but you know that you're doing the right thing by helping people take the right part, but they're owning their journey. And that's what changes behavior as well, because ultimately as coaches and freelancers and all the consultants, all the stuff we're trying to do, whether we're a dad or whatever, is that we're trying to change their behavior. And if we're wired to give advice and we're only giving advice, you don't get a behavior change. You get an action, but it doesn't change their behavior. And ultimately that's what we're trying to achieve. So
great, amazing stuff. I just love that. For me, as someone that loves practical stuff, the idea of having the filter. How can I turn this piece of advice into a question? And even if I think we're, like you say, we're hardwired to give advice. So even if that is the first step for you and going, okay, I want to give this advice, but I'm going to try and give this advice as a question. Yeah, that's a good start.
That's a good step. It's a good first step, and it's hard shift. But and even if you're like, I'm not always 100% great at it, right? There's times where I'm just like, I make mistakes like everybody else, right? But you've got to just continue to practice it all the time.
Amazing. Chris, I'm going to interrupt proceedings. Okay, it's time for a game. Cue the cheesy music. Once I get the timer up. The rules are simple, or the game is simple, I should say. It's the 5-second rule. Have you ever heard of the game before? Played it before?
I've never played it before.
Okay, the rules are simple. 10 cards with statements on each card. I'm going to read out the statement and you have 5 seconds to give me an answer to that statement. If you get the answer right, you get a point. If you don't get the answer right or the time runs out, you don't get the point.
All right, let's do it.
It's going to be statements like, name 3 types of bird. And 3 types. I have no idea.
Is this a point game? Am I getting judged on this?
No. Well, you are competing against all the other guests. I don't know what's on the cards, but my first question, which isn't part of the scoring, is do you want to go yellow or do you want to go red? Yellow's slightly harder.
Yeah, let's go yellow.
Let's go yellow. Okay, are you ready, Chris?
No.
I'll take that as a yes.
Anyway.
Okay, name 3 cats.
Albert, Roger, and Lizzie.
Those cats that you know?
No, I don't know. A tabby cat.
You're out of time, dude. But I like the naming. Name 3 animals or birds beginning with the letter C.
A crow, a cat, and a caterpillar.
Out of time. Close though. Name 3 boys' names beginning with the letter S.
Steve.
Out of time, it's tough. Quite a lot of people get their rhythm, so let's hope you can pick it up. Name 3 things you might find in a rubbish skip.
Plastic, tins, and dirt.
There we go. We're off to the races. It's a tough one. Name 3 furniture stores.
SDS. Don't know.
Don't think I'd get that one.
Dunelm Mill, maybe. No idea.
Name 3 countries in the Southern Hemisphere.
Brazil, Argentina, Peru.
Nice. Name 3 professional golfers.
Woods, nah. That's like got to be my worst subject, sports.
Okay, let's try this one then. Name 3 reality TV shows.
America's Got Talent, X Factor, Kardashians.
Nice. Name 3 festivals.
Leeds and Reading, Bloodstock, Download. I was going to say Download, yeah.
Almost. And name 3 numbers that add up to 100.
49, 1 and 50.
Nice. Chris Marr, you scored 4 out of 10.
And how's that fair?
You are not the lowest, actually.
Right, okay.
But you're not the highest.
Way to celebrate. You're not the lowest. Oh, well, okay. Good. Well, that's something, I suppose.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a Friday morning, so... And you're mid-coffee, I can see. So
yeah, I am mid-coffee, you're right.
Maybe let you off. So, a couple more questions for you, Chris. Mm-hmm. I want to talk. We've obviously spoken a lot about communication and maybe its usage in coaching.
Sure.
I saw a video of you with the kids a few months ago where you were using the art of communication and asking questions with the kids, teaching them things around the house. So, how has this way of communicating affected your relationship as a dad and your relationship with kids?
Yeah, it's huge. It's like a really big deal. I think the thing with communication is that it affects our whole life. I think when people are looking for communication skills training or teaching, they think about it as like a isolated thing, like work related, stage related, coaching related, whatever it is. But actually, it's something that affects our whole life. You know, it's probably one of the major skills that impacts our whole life across the board. So in fact, at home, it's actually a really great training ground. The kids are brilliant for this because they're kids. Like they're innocent, but they're also like they have BS filters as well. Like they can tell when you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes a little bit too. So it's actually a great training ground. So it has been huge for me. I've used it. I use the skills all the time. A lot of times without even realizing it, but it's brilliant for the kids because the kids do need to learn for themselves, you know, and I think they are more capable than they believe that they are, or they think that they are. And I think you can, as a parent, again, you're wired to give advice, right? They ask you a question, you give them the answer, done. But actually, you can be a teacher at home just by using these skills. So it's been huge, Gav. It's been really dramatic shift in terms of our relationship with the kids, how we communicate, and there's opportunities all the time. Like the one that you're talking about was teaching Paddy bathroom hygiene, right? And there was one where Sophie was choosing her university. Right? Easy to give advice. I went to St. Andrews, you should go to St. Andrews. But instead, we sat down for a couple of hours and I asked her questions to help her make her own decision. There's opportunities everywhere, especially at home with your partners, with your parents, with your kids, to practice being a better communicator.
And because we've had Marcus on and a lot of what we spoke about was the communicating with his children. And how that's impacted the relationship with his kids. And I think one of the biggest reasons people probably don't do it is this idea of, well, it's easier just to tell Sophie to go to St. Andrews as opposed to sitting down and working it out with her and asking these questions and having a proper conversation with her. And I can just, I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't really judge on this, but why, for you, it's not what's the benefit, but taking 2 hours out of your day to sit and speak to her like that, I guess, is that what sort of impact do you think that will have on her going to university and her relationship with you?
I understand what you're saying. So there's a bigger picture here. The bigger picture is trust, right? Trust and confidence with your kids and your relationship, this dynamic between parent and child. That's the big picture. So the questions, the technique, the methodology that you're using with the children is not really about what's happening in the moment, although that helps. It's the bigger picture. In other words, if Sophie finds herself in a tough spot one day, my hope is that she'll come to me, because I'm not going to tell her what to do. I'm going to listen. That Spencer is being bullied at school or something like that, and comes to me and tells me without hiding it. And because I'm there because I listen to how he feels, and I want him to, and I'm there to soothe him, and I'm not there to judge him, right? So the big picture is trust in this relationship as a parent and child. That's the big picture. So it's the benefit is that each time I do this, it builds a little bit more trust, a little bit more confidence in our relationship, and the ability that one day when they need advice and guidance, that they've got someone that they can go to. And we have this conversation with other parents all the time where they discover something about their kid that they were hiding from them. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we want them to tell us these things, but the reason they're not telling you, and this is what happens oftentimes, generally speaking, is that people blame the kid or the other person. So it's like, why didn't you tell me about this? And it's like, actually, it's the other way around. You're supposed to say, what can I do differently so that my child will tell me things like this?
Oh, my word.
That makes sense. So it's like a shift in communication. Oftentimes with communication, like you and I, for example, we might have a falling out about something. You'll blame me, I blame you. But actually it's what could I have done differently? What should I do differently? How could I have done things better? It has to be that way, because it's all we've got control over. I can't control what you do. So it's the same with the kids. It's like, what do I need to do? You got to remember as well, kids aren't really great at articulating their feelings. So we have to ask questions like, what are you worried about just now? What's making you sad? What are you happy just now? What do you feel good about? Questions like that to help them articulate how they feel. And as parents, that's our job. It's our job to help them articulate their feelings and bring them out. But the big picture, Gav, is that hopefully one day when they need us the most, they feel like they can come to us.
I love that. I feel like a lot of it's dropping the ego and realizing that it's not about you. So like, okay, what could I have done better? Or what could I have done to make this easier? Or what could I do for you to come and tell me these different things?
The ego is the blocker. That's what we're protecting all the time. That's why we don't ask the questions. That's why we don't do the things that are the right things to do, because we're trying to protect ourselves. The ego is like a funny thing for a lot. Like everybody has one, and everybody fights with it all the time. Some days it's fighting really hard. Sometimes it's really easy to overcome, and it's constantly there. You're constantly sort of battling it all the time. But it's like one of the questions I've been asking people recently is why do people not say sorry? Why do people not apologize to people about things anymore? And there's loads of reasons, but they're all circle around the ego, because we're trying to protect ourselves. We don't believe we're wrong. We don't. We want to be right. We don't want to shame, guilt, all that stuff. So it's like, but if we can just drop the ego, we'll be. I think it feels scary. Like it does drive fear into us because we're doing something that feels like out of our control. But by far and away, it's like where you will be your best in terms of communication and your relationship with other people as well.
Amazing. So much practical and philosophical questions and things coming from just this chat, Chris. And I would love to carry it on for hours, but we both have work to go and do. Yes. Chris, thanks so much for being on the show. Where can everyone find out what you're up to and what you're doing?
Yep, the best. If anyone's got any questions about anything or they want to pick my brain, the best place is Twitter at Chris Marr 101, and that's the easiest, quickest place to start something. So get me there.
Go and hit him up, because you're going to ask him a question and he's going to ping you back a question.
Yeah.
Great dialogue. Chris, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Gav. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Hey team, me again, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching the video version of the podcast. And I hope you took something away from that. Maybe a smile, maybe something of inspiration, or maybe an idea came to your mind. Be sure to drop me a comment and let me know what that thing was for you. Now, if you want to listen to more or watch more episodes of the podcast, you can do that here on YouTube or Facebook, or head over to Apple Podcasts or the podcasting platform of your choice. Just be sure to hit subscribe, leave us a little review and a 5-star rating, and I will love you forever. See you in the next episode.